Hi everyone. I'm going to be discussing the Week 5 reading called Student Barriers to Online Learning. So the reading discusses different barriers that students may face when they take online courses, as well as variables that can affect how those barriers are perceived by the students. So in this technological age, obviously online courses are becoming more and more popular, so it's important to look at this type of research and data, especially if you are a teacher or a professor and going to be designing an online course, and knowing what kind of barriers may exist, as well as how you can create the best possible online course for your students. So I'm going to just jump right into what barriers were discussed in the readings. The first one was social interaction. So what they mean by that is how students perceive social interaction on these online courses. So whether they were interacting with their fellow peers online, or if it was mainly all just work that they were doing on their own and there was no social interaction. Another barrier is administrative or instructor issues. And that would obviously have a negative impact on how students perceive online courses and be a barrier to their learning. Next is their motivation, learner motivation, and just how motivated they are to do the work in the online class, as opposed to how their motivation might change if they were in an in-person class. And lastly, the time and support that they have for their studies. So how much time are they willing to commit to the online class, or how they perceive how much time an online class will take. So those are the four main barriers that are discussed in this study. They did a literature review on other barriers on a previous study that were done, such as gender, age, and different things like that. But these were the ones that they decided to kind of delve deeper into. So then they go on to talk about 5 different variables that have the most impact on the above mentioned barriers. So the first one is confidence. So what they discussed was that respondents to surveys that they gave to students who had the highest level of comfort and confidence using online learning technologies perceived significantly fewer barriers, especially within the barriers that we mentioned: social interaction, administrative and instructor issues, motivation, and time and support for the studies. And obviously those who were unsure of their skills or felt less confident using online tools had increased visions or views of what these barriers were. The next variable is effectiveness of online learning. So students who had taken an online class were asked to compare how well they learned online as opposed to a traditional classroom. And it ended up being that the students who had never taken an online class had the highest barrier ratings, and those who just took even one class had a moderate or less level of barriers. And obviously those who took more online classes felt that they learned better online, so their barrier rating was very low. And some students indicated that learning online was equal to a traditional classroom. Online learning enjoyment is the next variable. So students were asked how they would compare how much they enjoy learning online as opposed to a traditional classroom. If students had never taken an online course, they were asked to predict how well they would like learning online. And the same trend exists in this variable as the one that we mentioned before in effectiveness. So students who did not enjoy learning online as much as they did in a traditional classroom had significantly higher barrier ratings, as opposed to those who did enjoy learning online or thought it was the same as being in a traditional classroom. And the lowest barrier ratings were from students who enjoyed online learning more so than a traditional classroom. The next variable is number of online courses completed. So again, as I mentioned earlier, those who just completed even one online class had less barriers, and those who had never taken one had more severe barriers than any of the other groups. So although the differences, I mean, from level to level of, how many classes they had taken were not significant, it did say that people who completed more online courses had less barriers. And they found that perceived barriers decrease as experience with online learning increases. So the more classes they take, obviously the more confident they are, and they'll be more motivated, and they'll budget enough time for it, so there'll be a lot less of those barriers that we had mentioned. And the final variable is likelihood of taking another online class in the future. So what's interesting about this variable is that the likelihood of taking an online class voluntarily in the future was strongly related to social interaction. Problems with learner motivation and administrative issues were next in terms of what affected this barrier. So the main thing that determined whether students took another online course was whether they had social interaction in their online courses. So this could mean interacting with their peers in a discussion thread or a group project, but that's what it seems the students want or prefer. And then next, the next thing that affected the likelihood of taking a future online class were issues with motivation, issues with the instructor, but yeah, the main thing is just the social interaction aspect. So final thoughts are, the reading makes sure to state that although obviously this is a very helpful research and it provides a lot of data, but it does not speak to causation. So it's easy to think that, oh well, you should have more social interaction, and that would lead to more benefits and more students taking another online course, which definitely might be true, and it does have its educational benefits, but it might actually be that students just enjoy online learning and believe that online learning is as effective as in-person education, and therefore their social interaction is improved because they perceive that it is the same as in-person education. Or there could be students who don't need social interaction to succeed in an online class. So they're very careful to say that this study shows relationships and not causes, and states that there needs to be more research done. But I think that the data here is valid and can greatly help educators who are designing online courses. There's a lot of great points brought up and a lot of ways that educators can create really great online courses or improve the online courses that they're already teaching. And especially the piece about social interaction, I think, regardless of whether this speaks to causation or not, it's definitely a key piece to include in any online courses that you will be doing. And clearly students will benefit from doing so.